Let's set the scene. You are working tirelessly on a class project, and you are fully dedicated, contributing a lot of your time and effort. However, when your group presents, everyone else receives the credit, not you. You want and deserve to be commended for your hard work. Has this ever happened to you? Unfortunately, you are not alone. Throughout history, individuals from all over the world of various ages, professions, and degrees of expertise have been denied recognition for work that is rightfully theirs, marginalized groups being more frequently affected. Let's talk about the Matilda effect. This concept encompasses the gender bias experienced by women all over the world, with particular application to women in science. The Matilda effect, as described by the Matilda Project, is the situation of women scientists who have been ignored, forgotten, or denied credit due to sex-linked prejudice. In short, it details the infamous phenomenon wherein women's accomplishments are frequently overshadowed by men in their industry. You may have heard of Rosalind Franklin, the female scientist whose work wasn't acknowledged until after her death, even though her famous X-ray diffraction image, Photo 51, led to the discovery of DNA's double helix structure. But have you heard about Barbara McClintock, Martha Gautier, Nettie Stevens, or Janet Mertz? Each of these female scientists also made groundbreaking discoveries in the field of genetics, but faced the common obstacle of sex discrimination. Let's explore their stories in greater detail. Barbara McClintock, a trailblazing cytogeneticist, endured sexism throughout her career, even being forced to sit outside the door while the involved men discussed the outcome of her experimental results. After graduating from Cornell University, she landed a coveted position at the Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, where she discovered a triploid species of maize containing 3 sets of chromosomes per cell rather than the typical 2. McClintock was shocked to see the publication listing her male colleague's name above her own, even though she was the primary researcher. She went on to challenge the notion that genes were locked into place by identifying transposons, also known as jumping genes. Although her advanced research was ignored by the scientific community, she was finally recognized many years later when she was awarded a Nobel Prize. Martha Gautier, a pediatric cardiologist, explored the relationship between chromosomal abnormalities and medical conditions. Being the only scientist in Paris who knew how to culture human cells, she was one of the 2 women admitted into a medical program that accepted a mere 80 students. Gautier received minimal support, yet, against all odds, discovered trisomy 21, the chromosomal variation that causes Down syndrome. Although her mentor attempted to take credit, it was ultimately Gautier's hard work that provided experimental evidence needed to identify this condition. Before her research could be formally published, she needed access to resources for visual evidence. Her seemingly supportive colleague, Jérôme Lejeune, eagerly volunteered to document the abnormal chromosome count with microscopic images. She later realized Lejeune had already given the images to her mentor without her consent. Lacking the authority to regain control over her own work, Lejeune presented Gautier's findings to the scientific community, claiming them as his own. Despite this betrayal, Gautier cared more about the science, agreeing to verify her original methods when approving his draft. While the published article ultimately listed her name, it was purposely misspelled and hidden in between Lejeune's name and that of her mentor, thereby diminishing her contributions. Nettie Stevens was an American geneticist who successfully completed a PhD at Stanford, a rare feat for women at the turn of the century. She is most renowned for discovering the genetic basis of sex determination, even though she shares this recognition with a famous male scientist, much like Martha Gautier. Wondering how an offspring's biological sex is established, Stevens researched the links between heredity and the role of the father's sperm. She concluded that X and Y chromosomal pairings lead to biological sex development. Her colleague and mentor at the time, esteemed E.B. Wilson, was attempting to answer the same question. Although he received similar results, Wilson continued to believe that environmental factors partially influence biological sex determination, unlike Stevens, whose results more closely aligned with Mendel's genetic theory. Regardless of Stevens publishing her more conclusive findings first, E.B. Wilson nonetheless received credit for the discovery. Janet Mertz's research laid the groundwork for recombinant DNA technology, launching the modern biotechnology revolution. Mertz attended MIT, one of the few highly regarded science-intensive universities that admitted women at the time. She later studied biochemistry at Stanford, developing a more efficient way to join DNA from different species. Her discovery of this streamlined technique known as sticky ends made it possible for scientists everywhere to construct recombinant DNA. Instead of gaining recognition for her research, it was used by her male colleagues to receive patents on cloning, even earning her professor a Nobel Prize in chemistry. Regardless, Mertz continued to initiate conversation on laboratory ethics, develop the field of genetic engineering, and expand current understanding about viral gene regulation and breast cancer. She even devoted her final years to advocating for gender equality in academics, providing conclusive mathematical evidence that biological sex in fact does not determine intellectual capabilities. We unequivocally now know that biological sex does not determine intellectual capabilities, making these stories even more tragic. Although these stories were linked with the common theme of gender barriers, we know other marginalized groups receive similar treatment, like those of different economic status, education levels, ethnicities, and religions. So, how can we right some of these historical wrongs committed? Let's begin by never allowing others to limit our abilities based on our identity, whether that's sex, gender, race, or otherwise. Likewise, let's acknowledge others for their achievements, making sure we give credit where credit is due. We can achieve this goal by simply citing sources on a school project, or by being bold enough to use our voices to stand up for the social injustices around us. By remembering these female stories, we can learn to fully embrace our differences and unique perspectives, knowing that diversity brings about greatness. Thanks for watching.